Artefact, Stones of Fatima, an intense new Nigerian thriller, is set to hit the cinemas on 21st March 2025. The film follows the son of a deceased museum curator and his three friends as they travel across Nigeria in search of precious stones stolen from a priceless artifact. However, their quest soon spirals into danger as they unknowingly become entangled in a complex scheme involving an ex-senator, an African art recovery agency, and a ruthless international art thief. The movie blends action, suspense, and drama, exploring the world of art theft and international conspiracy.
Mama, there's nothing left in Baba's work. The money is not enough to take care of this family. I have to go to Lagos.
Now, Tolu Awobiyi, a renowned film producer and director, popularly known as Lord Tana, is here in the studio to shed light on the creative process behind Artefact, Stones of Fatima, while also sharing his insight on the current and future landscape of Nigerian cinema. Good to have you on Newsday. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So the Artefact, tell us the story behind it, because I know that for every creative, there's always a story behind the story, which is the real story. So tell us the story behind the story.
Okay, as a young kid, I always wanted to have adventures. We all read Enid Blyton's, the famous Fives, Secret Sevens. She helped form the mind. And for me, I always wondered, what would it be like to be in an African adventure? What would an African adventure look like? And so when I got the opportunity to make the Artefact, I pitched it a bit to a couple of platforms, and they were like, this would be really good to see. I started to basically start thinking, what would it be like to have an adventure across Nigeria? So I grew up in Lagos, but I used to spend Christmas in Ilesha. And I remember, my parents used to take us to the waterfalls in Ilesha. And there's a place called Irinjesha Waterfalls, and whenever we went, it was just so beautiful. We had 7 cascading waterfalls. And so I said, well, let's make the first location there. And then I happened to have schooled in Enugu, Federal Government College, Enugu. And then I served in Jos. And while I was in Jos, I would go out to all these waterfalls and all these beautiful places. And, so while I was building this story, I thought, what if we could take, a story, create an adventure that took people across those locations while they watched the film. I've always been an aficionado of, arts and artifacts. I remember once I was in the London Museum and I just wanted to do a 10-minute stopover, and I walked into that museum and I spent 8 hours in the museum. It's, for me, exploring the past has always been an exciting thing. And I thought the new generation needs to have this experience. And I said, can we get young people to go on an adventure across Nigeria? And that's where the inspiration for this film came.
Now, talking about young people, having that kind of perspective and the way you put it, do you see this film picking their minds, to key into that analogy you just made?
I'll say to you that it's already happened. On Tuesday during the week, we had over 400 guests at the J. Randall Center, where there's a museum, and we had our premiere at the museum. And 70% of the audience was very, really young and young at-hearted people. And, the response we got from the audience was awesome, because again, like I said, the story was built with the intention to grow with the young audience that are coming in mind. So we had 4 young kids traveling across Nigeria in a beautiful little Jeep, where they were basically looking for the stones that were hidden all across. And I think that a lot of times you want to be careful not to reveal too much of your story, but the excitement and the feedback I got, was worth the effort, because it took us about 2 years to make this film, and it's been for some time coming.
Okay, so not to put some spoilers on the table, as you said, does this reflect the story of the stolen Benin artifacts? Because I know that, yes, over time they've been returning some of them, but Excellent. We know that there are still some of the artifacts that have been stolen that are not within the coffers of the country. Does this reflect Excellent. That in any way? So
it actually sits at the heart of that. The story starts with an artifact that was stolen in Jos Museum. We situated it around as an experience that actually happened in Jos in 1987. There was actually a robbery where several artifacts were stolen from the museum, and we wanted to highlight the fact that across Africa, enough is not being done to protect our artifacts, and so part of that is to get the next generation aware that, listen, this is something that you need to preserve. As they begin to we talk about the Benin, and there's a lot of repatriation that's not happening. They want to bring back this art. It's the responsibility sits on us, to protect these artifacts. In our story, we have a fictional agency called the African Arts Agency. I'm hoping the government picks it up and does something about it. But my point is, it's not enough to say we want it back. We have to put the kind of security, the kind of protection around these artifacts. It's sad to say, because I'm not sure they will be happy that I'm going to be saying this, but I walked into the Jos Museum and I was sad to see pottery that I would not find anywhere. I was literally almost in tears, on the floor. In a place where rain can beat it and destroy it. This is made out of mud, right? We need to preserve our artifacts. There's some Finnish architect built this replica of the Zaria Palace in the Jos Museum, and it's melting away. Literally in the open, there's no preservation of these arts. So while we say we want to bring back these arts, we also have the onus is on us to preserve the arts that we're protecting. And this is one of the things I'm trying to create with this story, to get people really interested in what we're, the arts of the African arts. And beyond just telling a Nigerian story, we're going to be creating sequels to this film. And the idea is to take this film on a journey where, across Africa, we're going to Tanzania, to Rwanda, to a bunch of other countries, telling the story, creating excitement, creating interest in the future generation.
I can't help but think maybe the Indiana Jones series must have had an inspiration here when you talk about artifacts and all that. But then again, let's talk about creating that awareness. Where do you see the cinematic culture going with this film? Because it's about telling the African story. Are we doing more of that, from your perspective?
In my opinion, first of all, film is entertainment. And so it's important that people, when they watch films, enjoy it. But as filmmakers, we have a responsibility to also educate, also open up new vistas. Now, I find that in my industry, and this is me not necessarily being critical, maybe because at this point in our journey, we still need to chase the money, right? We're not very topical. We spend a lot of time just, creating films that are daddy loves mommy got angry with daddy, and and with this film, we're not playing safe. We had to be daring. We had to tell a story that required that 80 people travel across 7 states on the road in December in 2023. So there was a lot of risk that we took making this film. And it meant breaking the bounds, going out of the norm to, do something different. Now, I can tell you that, like you said, there's currently no film like this film. I know that a number of films like this will now begin to come out. But cinematically, I believe that the responsibility lies on us to tell different stories, different genres, open up new vistas, so that we truly can bring this African audience to the table. Right now, we only have about 80 cinemas across Nigeria. That's not enough. That's not enough.
But do you think Netflix is, in all these other online platforms, is also taking a greater share of the...
Interestingly, they came around, and I'd like to say that maybe they didn't find us ready, and they've taken a slightly, withdrawn position towards the industry. But I think that it's our responsibility to build our own platforms, to build our own opportunities, and this is why we're trying to make films like this, films that don't, sit in the usual, so that they begin to see, okay, there is actually opportunity. There are stories to tell in Africa. There are stories that we can take that are like, because again, I tell people that the African audience is not just Nigerian. The African audience is the whole continent. And that's what the Indians understood. That's why they have the Bollywood that is doing exceptionally well. They have 1 billion people on that continent. We have over 1 billion in Africa. Why don't we build films that communicate across Africa? And that's what we're thinking here.
And looking at the screen, I can see there are a lot of new faces, especially in this movie.
Correct.
I'd like to know what informed your choice of the cast. And then you earlier said that we create a lot of similar movies when it comes to, love and all of that. But I would want to think otherwise. I would want to differ with that, because we've seen Nollywood, evolve over the years. We've
Correct.
seen some really, really nice movies
New
coming.
things breaking
Coming from there with different, interesting storylines. But I'd like to know what informed your choice of the cast,
Okay.
especially seeing that there are a lot of new faces.
So, I'll put them in two boxes. The old that meets the new. So with the 4 young actors that were going on board, I wanted to, bring in people that gave us a sense of newness, right? Now we had Adeoluwa, a lady called Miracle Yanda. She's all the way from Jos. We had Chidima, who was played by Sharon Rotimi, and Ovi Godin, who's a comedian, And the idea was to bring these 4 young people to create a new energy. Now, of the older cast, we then had Bimbo Manuel, Uncle Bimbo, who's a veteran, a fantastic veteran. We had Shola Foshudo, Professor Shola Foshudo, who's a lecturer, who lectures at LASU. We added that to Kunle Remi, who's pretty popular, and Gabriela Folayan. Now, the idea is to show that there's a transition that is happening. As these older ones get older, you begin to insert the new ones. And then we had these other supporting actors, Wendy Lawal, who's on Africa Magic, Oke Ozoeshi, who's big in the East, and all of these characters. And trying to make sure that we cut across, cross-segment of people from different segments of Nigeria to ensure that, you get a full feel. And so in making our selection, we were very careful to make sure that we didn't leave anyone out of the room.
Now, Tolu, to tell a story,
Yes.
Usually you've got to have the right equipment.
Correct.
To make it look as convincing as possible in that direct. And I've seen some of the shots of some of the clips we just saw there. So in terms of the tools, this is the digital age, that you make use of. Where are we in terms of film production to actually tell a story, not just within the domestic perspective, but something you can actually export beyond the African region as well. So the quality of what you produce has to be good with the right equipment.
Correct.
So give us your insight on that.
So I'll say since the advent of the digital age, where we took went away from the the big cameras to the smaller, more digital, more agile type products, I found that our cinematography is significantly improved. However, I say to you that film is designed with the ecosystem in which it is in. I always use this as a simple example. Everybody loved Black Panther, but the budget for Black Panther was 200 million, right? Now, to give us perspective, the Oyo State government's budget for 1 year is about $136 million. The whole state, right? Now, of course, my audience watches a Black Panther and expects me as a Nigerian filmmaker to produce, you have to match that level. Now, the truth is, while it's still a story, the world you are able to build around that story is subject to the resources you have. So, like I said, I took 80 people across Nigeria. I had to feed them for 22 days. Put them in vehicles, put them in hotels, make sure they're safe, make sure there's, none of my vehicles break down and leave them in the middle of the forest, know. And so it all then sits on what's my budget, right? What can I create? In a Nigerian setting, my budget is extremely high, but in reality, my budget comes in at about $200,000. Now, if I compare a film that's made for $200,000 with a film that's made for $200 million, they're going to still find a way to see some of that difference, right? Now, our job and that's why they call us, Africa Magic. We're doing magic with almost nothing. I remember once I was at the BFI, the British Film Institute in London, and they said that their best students are giving a grant of £1 million to go shoot their first film. I'm like, in all the 12 years I spent making film, I've not had half of that amount. My biggest film is The Artefact, and it's $200,000. So in the end, we're making film in the ecosystem that we find ourselves, and we're still in the building process. So I would say to our audiences, be patient. We're coming. We're telling good stories. It's emerging. Just give us time. We're going to get there.
All right, one movie at a time. Thank you so much for your time, Tolu. Awobiyi, film director and producer, and we wish you a good ROI on this investment.
This is very important. Thank you.